Okay, so in the last video you might have seen me write this, hello world. And the way I did that, if you missed it, was print hello world. And all this is it's saying on here I want to print this, and this says hello world. Now this is you might have seen this before, it's a classic thing, is to get the computer to say hello world. If you want to be a cool programmer, that's usually the first thing you do. Feel free to do that. But I'm going to be teaching you about variables in this first real lesson. And with a variable, we could simplify this. We could just say print h or print hw. And now what we would have to do that is we would have to define a variable. And to define a variable, we come up with a name, and the name could be anything. It could be name or hw for hello world, and then we say equals. Now in here we can put anything. If we put letters, numbers, or we want to write something, it's called a string, and we have to put two of these symbols, and we just put whatever we want in between it. And strings have conditions and things that they can do, but we'll get more into that later. First thing you need to know is to make a string, it looks like this, and it doesn't have to say string, it can say anything. And if we made this a number, or otherwise known as an integer, we write 1. Now if we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but I'll show you this. If we write 1 and then we put the words integer or int around this, we're saying we want the integer of this string. Now this might not seem to be obviously useful, but it will become useful in the future if you have to convert values and use values that were once inputted by a user, and then the user inputs them as a string, and then you want to convert it to a number because it uses a conditional. A conditional just means if something happens, I want something else to happen. I'll get onto that later, but anyway. So that's a string, and then it's an integer. And the last value that I'll teach you about is a float. And so you might think, what would a float be? We've got numbers and we've got strings. What else would we store? Now a float is something that has a decimal point. And now that might just seem like a number, but the way that computers do maths, you have to specify that you want it to be a floating point number or integer, but it's not an integer or number. Anyway, now what I was going to show you was hw equals hello world. And now this will allow me to print hw. And now we've already got this printing hw, so we will just comment this out with a hash. And now you can put as many of them as you want. In Python, that is the way to comment something, and a comment is not usually looks like this. Usually it would be a hash, and it would say what the bit below the hash does. So I would not comment this because it's such a simple piece of code, but if you want to comment it, feel free to comment whatever you want, and change your code in any way just to make it you understand it. I would put a hash, and then I would say the code below. I wouldn't say that, but I'm just emphasizing. The code below sets the value, no, not value, I lost the word, sets the variable, variable hw to the string hello world. Now this is a very long comment, and it's obvious what this does, but in the future, if you want to comment your piece of code, you can do, and usually it's just used to say what the bit below or above does. And now if we run this by pressing F5 and we save it, so there we go, I missed the parentheses. I make errors like everyone. We put these parentheses around whatever we want to print, and we print hw, and then we press OK, and it prints hello world. Now this has just got it to do exactly the same thing as we did before, but I feel now I've shown you a few things, and yeah, that was basically variables in very short. Next lesson I'll teach you some more cool tricks.